I thought discovering that bill for genetic testing was the worst blow my marriage could take. Turns out, I was wrong. While I was grinding through 16-hour workdays, my wife had been siphoning off hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the prenuptial agreement she insisted I sign, well, it had one small clause she never paid attention to. And she's about to find out why that was a mistake. My name's Lance Hawthorne. I'm 42 years old, and until about 6 months ago, I truly believed I had life figured out. I manage IT projects for a mid-sized tech firm in Austin, Texas. The pay's solid, the work's steady, the kind of job that lets a man rest easy at night knowing his family's taken care of. Felicia runs a boutique clothing shop downtown. Or at least, that's what I believed she was doing all those hours. We've got 3 kids. Asher's 8, smart as they come. Luna's 5, a little mirror of her mother. And Samuel, our youngest, just turned 2. He's got these striking green eyes that don't match either my brown ones or Felicia's. Still, genetics can be strange, right? That's what I kept telling myself every time someone commented on how different he looked. The thing about Betrayal is, it doesn't make an entrance with fireworks or dramatic music. It slips in quietly, like a cat on soft paws, while you're too busy living your routine to notice. For me, it began with a crumpled receipt stuck between the couch cushions, a medical bill for genetic counseling I'd never heard about. When I asked Felicia, she brushed it off, said it was standard procedure for Samuel's checkup. Nothing serious, she said, not even glancing up from her phone. Just being thorough. But I've spent 12 years managing IT projects. I know what thorough looks like, and I know what evasion sounds like, too. Thorough would have meant including me in the conversation. Thorough would have meant explaining why our toddlers suddenly needed genetic counseling when our other kids never did. That night, after Felicia fell asleep, I sat in my office staring at that receipt. The date was 3 weeks old, right around the time she'd started coming home late more often. The clinic listed wasn't anywhere near Samuel's usual pediatrician. And the service? Not standard counseling. It was for paternity testing. I didn't sleep a minute that night. Instead, I did what I do best. I started collecting data. Every financial statement, every shared account record, every document that bore Felicia's signature. What I uncovered would have impressed me if it hadn't been tearing my world apart. She hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been meticulous about it. Hidden accounts. Money transfers so precise a forensic accountant would have nodded in approval. And somewhere in the middle of all that, she'd had our youngest son tested to confirm whether I was his father. When I finally got hold of the results, they told me what those green eyes had been hinting at for 2 years. Samuel wasn't mine. But by then, that was just another entry in the growing pile of evidence that was about to bury the life we'd built together. I should have confronted her right then. A stronger man probably would have. But I'm methodical, too. And something told me that storming in without a plan would only give her time to erase the tracks. So I waited. I watched. I documented everything. Because if Felicia wanted to play games with our family's future, I was going to make sure I understood every rule. The hardest part about discovering your wife's betrayal isn't the anger, it's the clarity. Suddenly, every odd conversation snaps into place. Every flimsy excuse fits together like puzzle pieces you've been forcing the wrong way for months. I spent the next week digging through our digital life like an archaeologist. Felicia had always been careless with passwords, variations of the same few words everywhere. Her laptop, supposedly for boutique inventory, painted a completely different picture. "Daddy, why are you using Mommy's computer?" Asher asked one night, catching me in her office. "Just helping her fix a few tech issues, buddy," I said, shutting the laptop. "You know how your mom is with computers." He nodded and wandered off, but his question lingered. There I was, invading my wife's privacy because she'd already violated our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. What I found made my stomach twist. Email threads with someone named Damian Cross, discussing their future together. Bank transfers to accounts under her maiden name. Investment portfolios I'd never seen. And worst of all, messages about Samuel. The test came back positive. Felicia had written, "He's definitely yours. Now we just need to figure out the timing." I printed everything. Emails, statements, every shred of proof that my wife had been orchestrating this betrayal for years. The woman I trusted with my home, my heart, and my children had been dismantling it all piece by piece, while I worked 16-hour days to keep our family afloat. The boutique? It existed, sure, but it doubled as a front for laundering money from Damien's construction company. Apparently, my wife had been having an affair with a married contractor just as eager to hide assets from his own wife as she was from me. That night, I called my mother, Ruth. She lives about 20 minutes away, and she's always been sharp as a blade when it comes to reading people. My mother wasn't surprised. I always knew something was off about that woman, Ruth said after I told her the basics. She'd always dodge questions about her shop, and those pricey handbags she called good fakes. Mom, I need your help, I said. Not just to talk. Legal help. You still have connections from your paralegal days, right? Her tone shifted immediately. What do you need, son? I need to make sure she doesn't walk away with everything when this blows up. And I need to make sure she doesn't take my kids. Our kids, Ruth corrected softly. Samuel may not share your DNA, but you've been his dad for 2 years. That counts in court. She was right. Whatever Felicia had done, whatever lies she'd told, I wasn't going to turn my back on that little boy. He deserved more than being a pawn in his mother's games. I'll make some calls, Ruth promised. But Lance, whatever you're planning, think 3 steps ahead. Women like Felicia don't go down quietly. She was absolutely right. But what Felicia didn't realize was that I'd already started thinking 3 steps ahead. I just hadn't realized I was playing the wrong game. Ruth came through faster than I expected. 3 days later, she showed up at my office with a business card and that knowing look she always had. Meeting set for tomorrow at 10, she said, sliding the card toward me. Patricia Kendall. Family law. She's handled messes like this before, and she doesn't lose. That evening, I sat Asher and Luna down for what I hoped would sound like a normal talk. Samuel was already asleep upstairs, which made it easier. Kids, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest, I said, sitting between them on the couch. Does Mommy ever have friends over while I'm at work? Grown-up friends? Asher squirmed a little. You mean like Uncle Damien? My heart stopped cold. Uncle Damien comes over when you're not home, he continued. Sometimes, Luna added. He brings toys and plays with Samuel a lot. Mommy says he's Samuel's special friend. I kept my voice calm, though I was screaming inside. How often does Uncle Damien visit? Maybe twice a week, Asher said. But Mommy told us not to tell you, because it would make you sad. There it was, proof that Felicia had been coaching my own children to lie to me, turning them into accomplices while I worked 60-hour weeks to support the family. It's okay that you told me, I said, pulling them close. You're not in trouble. But from now on, if anyone visits, you tell me, okay? No more secrets. The next morning, I met Patricia Kendall, and she was exactly the kind of person I needed. A sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who spoke in facts, not feelings. Show me what you've got, she said, taking her seat. I handed over the folder I'd been building, bank records, email printouts, the paternity results, everything. She read through each page with steady precision, jotting notes in neat, deliberate handwriting. You've done your homework, Kendall said finally. Your wife's been busy. But let me ask, do you have a prenuptial agreement? Yes. Felicia insisted on one before we got married. Said it protected both of us. I'll need to see it, Kendall replied. Prenups can cut both ways, depending on the wording. She leaned forward. Based on this evidence, we can file for divorce on grounds of infidelity and financial fraud. But custody, that's where the real battle will be. She'll weaponize the kids. She already has, I said quietly, thinking of the secret she'd drilled into them. Then we move fast, Kendall said. Document every exchange with her. Record calls if Texas law allows. And, Lance, start deciding what kind of father you'll be when this ends. That little boy will still need you, no matter what biology says. Finding the prenup was easier than I thought. Felicia had kept it filed neatly with our other legal papers, probably believing it made her untouchable. She was about to learn how wrong she was. That Friday night, after she went to bed early complaining of a headache, probably texting Damien about their weekend plans while I prepared to work Saturday, I pulled it out. Flipping through the pages, I remembered why she'd pushed for it so hard. Standard stuff, separate assets, debt clauses, inheritance details. But then, halfway down page 7, I spotted something I'd nearly forgotten. Clause 7C. In the event of marital infidelity involving undisclosed financial activity, all shared assets revert to the non-offending spouse. I stared at those words for a full minute. 9 years ago, when her lawyer wrote that contract, they'd unknowingly handed me a weapon. The prenup Felicia demanded to protect herself was about to become the blade that cut her down. Saturday morning, I called Patricia Kendall from my office. "Patricia, I found the prenup," I said. "You'll want to hear what's in Clause 7C. "Read it to me," she replied. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Kendall spoke. "Lance, this clause is enforceable. If you can prove both infidelity and financial fraud, which it sounds like you can, you have legal grounds to claim every shared asset. The house, cars, business interests, everything." "And the kids?" I asked. "Custody is separate from asset division," she said. "But financial security will heavily strengthen your case." That afternoon, I crossed a line I never thought I would. I installed tracking software on our family computer. Every keystroke, every website, every file she touched, recorded, and uploaded to a secure server. It felt wrong, invasive. But Felicia had already crossed that line months ago when she started stealing from her own family's future. By Sunday night, I had enough evidence to sink her completely. Email exchanges with Damien about their escape plan. Bank transfers timed perfectly with my business trips. Even a draft message to a divorce attorney she'd never sent, outlining how she'd take the house and full custody. The woman I once trusted more than anyone was plotting to dismantle my life piece by piece. But thanks to the clause she'd insisted on, I was about to use her own weapon against her. Monday morning, I set up another meeting with Patricia Kendall. It was time to stop gathering data and start taking action. The appointment was for Tuesday morning, but that Monday night changed everything. I was in my home office reviewing project timelines when I heard Felicia's voice drifting from the kitchen. It had that sharp, gloating tone she used when she thought she was winning. "No, Damien," she was saying. "He doesn't suspect a thing. Lance is too buried in work to notice what's happening right under his nose. We just need to stick to the plan." I moved quietly toward the kitchen doorway, keeping to the shadows. "The divorce papers are ready," she continued. "My lawyer says with the prenup, I'll keep the house and get primary custody. You just have to make sure your wife doesn't find out until it's all finalized." My fists clenched. She was talking about tearing apart our family like it was a business deal. "Samuel's getting attached to you," she said, her tone softening. "That's perfect. Once this is over, we'll finally be a real family. No more hiding." That was it. I stepped into the doorway. "When what's over, Felicia?" I asked quietly. She spun around, phone still in hand. Her face went pale, then flushed red before settling into that cold, defiant look I'd come to know too well. "I'll call you back," she muttered into the phone before hanging up. We stood facing each other across the kitchen island like two gunslingers before a duel. 9 years of marriage, 3 children, and every promise we'd ever made condensed into one brutal moment of truth. "How long were you listening?" she asked. "Long enough," I said. "How long have you been planning to destroy our family?" "I'm not destroying anything, Lance. I'm fixing it," she snapped. "You're never here. You don't see what the kids need, or what I need." "What you need?" I shot back. "Money that isn't yours? Another man while you're still married to me? Teaching our kids to lie for you?" Her jaw tightened. "Those kids deserve more than a father who works himself into the grave and ignores them. Samuel isn't even my child, is he?" The words came out before I could stop them. Her confidence cracked for a second, and something like guilt flickered in her eyes. "Biology isn't everything," she said finally. "No," I said, "but honesty is. And you threw that away for whatever this is with Damien." "You want honesty?" she snapped back. "Let's talk about how you've been spying on me, snooping through my things, invading my privacy." "Your privacy?" I said, disbelief flooding my voice. "You've been stealing from our family, Felicia. Moving money into secret accounts. Using our kids as props in your lies." "That money is mine," she hissed. "I earned it through the boutique." "The boutique you've been using to launder Damien's construction profits," I countered. "The investment accounts you open with my credit. None of that money is yours, and you know it." Something shifted in her expression. The defiance stayed, but calculation crept in. "You can't prove any of that," she said. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "Actually, I can. Every email, every transaction, every lie. It's all documented. Including Clause 7C in that prenup you were so proud of." "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "Read your own contract," I said. "Infidelity plus financial misconduct equals you lose everything. The house, the accounts, the kids, everything." Her phone buzzed with a text message. Without hesitation, she glanced down, and I caught Damien's name lighting up her screen. "You might want to let your boyfriend know," I said coldly, "that his wife may be very interested in those construction deals you two have been whispering about. I'm guessing she's unaware of the money laundering too." Felicia's complexion drained of color. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. Within 2 days of that confrontation, Felicia had hired her own attorney, Jonathan Rivers, a polished downtown lawyer whose billboards boasted about fighting for your rights in divorce court. She clearly believed that bringing in a shark would scare me into a quiet settlement. She was about to realize how mistaken she was. By Wednesday morning, Patricia called with an update that made my day considerably brighter. "Lance, I just got off the phone with Jonathan Rivers," she said. "He wants to arrange a mediation session next week. Claims his client's ready to negotiate." "And what does reasonable mean to them?" I asked. "Joint custody. Felicia keeps the house, and you accept liability for any hidden debts she might have built up. Standard play when the wife's lawyer assumes the husband's desperate to avoid bad press." I laughed aloud. "They have no clue about Clause 7C, do they?" "Apparently not," Patricia said. Rivers spent 20 minutes explaining how the prenup protects his client from losing any marital assets. I didn't correct her. "So what's our move?" "We let them walk straight into the trap," Patricia replied. "Go to mediation, let Rivers make his demands, then hit them with the evidence and the real meaning of the prenup. It'll have far more impact than blindsiding them in court." That evening, I sat down with Asher and Luna while Samuel played with his blocks nearby, close enough that I could watch him, far enough that he couldn't follow our talk. "Kids," I began, lowering myself to the floor beside them. "Mommy and Daddy are going to be living in different homes soon." Asher frowned. "Like Tyler's parents?" "Yes," I said softly. "But that doesn't change how much I love you, or that I'll always be your dad." "What about Samuel?" Luna asked, glancing toward her little brother. "I'll always look after Samuel too," I said. "He's part of our family." Asher hesitated. "But Uncle Damien said he's Samuel's dad." My heart pounded, though I kept my tone even. "When did Uncle Damien tell you that?" "Last week," Asher said. "He said soon Samuel would live with him and Mommy in a new house, and we could visit sometimes." The fury that surged through me was white-hot. Damien had been discussing custody with my 8-year-old son, manipulating him to accept losing his brother. That was a new low, even for this nightmare. "Listen to me carefully," I said, steady but firm. "No matter what anyone says, you three will stay together. I promise you that." They nodded, though confusion and fear clouded their eyes. They were old enough to sense their world unraveling, too young to understand why. That night, I called Patricia at home. "Patricia, I need to add something to our file," I said. "Damien's been talking to my kids, telling them he's taking Samuel away from his siblings." "That's emotional manipulation," she said immediately. "We can use that. In custody hearings, judges focus on the children's stability and best interests. A man who tells an 8-year-old he's breaking up the family doesn't look good to a judge, even though Samuel's biologically his. Biology is only one factor, Lance. You've been Samuel's father for 2 years. The court will care more about his well-being than Damien's ego." Friday morning, I did something that felt both wrong and necessary. I installed recording software on the kids' tablets and phones. If Felicia or Damien planned to use my children as pawns, I wanted proof of every word they said. The mediation was set for Tuesday. Jonathan Rivers likely thought he was walking into a negotiation where his client held all the cards. He was about to learn that while Felicia had been playing poker, I'd been playing chess. The mediation took place in a sterile downtown conference room, the kind where lives get dissected and reassembled by legal formulas. Rivers strutted in like he owned the place, his briefcase probably worth more than most people's rent. Felicia sat beside him, calm and polished in a designer dress and fresh manicure, the perfect image of a wronged wife seeking justice. She didn't even look at me when Patricia and I entered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rivers began smoothly as he took his seat. "Let's keep this simple. My client is willing to be generous in this dissolution, despite the emotional hardship she's endured." Patricia and I exchanged a knowing look. This was going to be even more satisfying than we'd hoped. "Mrs. Hawthorne will retain the marital home," Rivers continued, flipping through his notes. "Primary custody of all 3 children, with supervised visitation for Mr. Hawthorne pending completion of anger management counseling. I finally spoke. Anger management? My client has documented instances of intimidation and privacy violations, Rivers said smoothly. Felicia finally turned toward me, her face cold and calculated, clearly enjoying the performance. Rivers continued, Mr. Hawthorne will also be responsible for any debts incurred during the marriage, including recent business expenses made in good faith by Mrs. Hawthorne. Business expenses? Patricia asked innocently. Consulting fees, equipment purchases, ordinary entrepreneurial costs, I added silently. All legitimate, just not profitable. Felicia nodded solemnly, perfectly playing the disappointed businesswoman. She had missed her true calling, acting. Rivers concluded, in exchange, Mrs. Hawthorne is waiving spousal support and allowing Mr. Hawthorne to keep his retirement accounts. Patricia leaned back. Very interesting, Mr. Rivers. Before we respond, perhaps you'd like to review the prenuptial agreement your client signed. We've examined it thoroughly. Standard asset protection clauses, which clearly favor my client, including Clause 7C. Rivers frowned. I'm not sure what you mean. Patricia slid a highlighted copy across the table. Page 7, paragraph C. Please read it aloud. He scanned the page, and I watched his color drain as he realized what was there. Out loud, Patricia prompted. In the event of marital infidelity involving undisclosed financial transactions, Rivers read slowly. The entirety of marital assets reverts to the non-offending party. Felicia leaned forward. What does that mean? Rivers paused, rereading the clause. Patricia's calm voice answered. It means that if we can prove adultery and financial misconduct, your client loses everything. House, bank accounts, business interests, everything. You can't prove that, Felicia said, her voice tight. I opened my folder and began laying evidence across the table. Emails, bank statements, paternity test results, even security camera photos. Each document landed with precision. Actually, I said, I can prove all of it. Felicia stared at the spread like it was a diagnosis, her perfect composure starting to crack at the edges. The prenup is bulletproof, I continued. Remember? You insisted on it, said it would protect both of us. Turns out, you were only half right. Rivers frantically flipped pages, searching for loopholes that didn't exist. This is entrapment, Felicia whispered. No, I said quietly. This is consequences. The real divorce hearing was scheduled 2 weeks after the disastrous mediation. Rivers tried to delay it 3 times, needing time to defend the indefensible. Judge Patricia Hernandez was known for running a fast, no-nonsense courtroom. When Rivers began his opening argument, she looked as if she'd rather be anywhere else. Your Honor, my client has suffered an elaborate campaign of harassment and intimidation. Judge Hernandez cut him off. I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement and the evidence. Do you have any legal basis for challenging Clause 7C? Rivers hesitated. Your Honor, the clause is buried in technical language my client could not reasonably be expected to understand. She had legal representation when she signed it, correct? The judge asked. Yes, but she insisted on the prenup despite her husband's initial reluctance. Yes, Your Honor. Patricia's preparation was perfect. The court record included testimony from the original attorney, confirming Felicia demanded the prenup and that all terms were explained to both parties. The circumstances have changed, Rivers tried weakly. The circumstances, Judge Hernandez said dryly, are exactly what this clause was designed for. I watched Felicia, once composed, now completely shattered. She kept glancing at Damien in the gallery, looking like he wanted to vanish. Mrs. Hawthorne, please stand, the judge said. Felicia rose unsteadily. Are you familiar with Clause 7C of your prenuptial agreement? My lawyer said the prenup was just standard protection, Felicia began. That's not what I asked, Judge Hernandez interrupted. Are you familiar with Clause 7C? Felicia's voice was barely a whisper. I am now. Do you understand that by having extramarital affairs while hiding financial assets, you triggered the conditions outlined in that clause? Your Honor, I can explain, Felicia started. Ma'am, the judge said firmly, this is not a negotiation. This is a legal proceeding based on a contract you signed willingly and knowingly. Judge Hernandez turned to Patricia. Counselor, your client is seeking full enforcement of Clause 7C? Yes, Your Honor. That means all marital assets, home, joint accounts, business interests, and primary physical custody of all 3 children, with reasonable visitation for Mrs. Hawthorne, including the child not biologically related to Mr. Hawthorne. Samuel has known him as his father for 2 years. Stability and continuity serve the child's best interests. Judge Hernandez nodded. Mr. Rivers, does your client wish to contest the paternity evidence or the financial records? Rivers looked at Felicia. She only shook her head. No, Your Honor. Then this matter is straightforward. The prenuptial agreement is valid and enforceable. Clause 7C has been triggered by documented infidelity and financial misconduct. All marital assets transfer to Mr. Hawthorne. The gavel fell like a gunshot. Felicia turned toward me, eyes wide with something beyond anger or defiance, recognition. For the first time in our marriage, she truly saw me. The prenup she demanded to protect herself had become her downfall, and the quiet husband she underestimated had been playing chess while she played checkers. 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen of what was now legally my home. Samuel played with blocks, while Asher and Luna worked on homework at the dining table. Life felt surreal, but normal. Felicia had moved into a small apartment across town. Court-ordered supervised visitation meant she saw the kids every other weekend, with a social worker present to prevent any inappropriate discussions about the divorce or Damien. Daddy, Luna said from her math worksheet. When is Mommy coming to pick us up? Saturday afternoon, sweetheart. Same as always, I replied. The transition had been tough, but kids are resilient. They adapted with the calm acceptance only children can master. Damien had vanished entirely from their lives after the divorce and the loss of half his construction business. Patricia hadn't been bluffing about contacting Mrs. Cross with the truth about her husband. Ruth visited most evenings, helping with dinner and bedtime routines. Her support had made the difference between surviving and thriving during those early weeks. Any word from Felicia's attorney about the asset settlement? Ruth asked. Join me in the kitchen, I said. Final paperwork should be done next week. The boutique sale went through, and all hidden accounts were returned to the children's education funds. I looked at Samuel, the little boy who had called me daddy for 2 years. Not mine by DNA, but completely mine by heart. Biology didn't change that. Ruth smiled. Your father would be proud of how you handled this, Lance. I just did what had to be done. No, you did more, she said. You protected your family without becoming the kind of man who destroys everything around him. That takes real strength. That night, after the kids were asleep, I reflected on the man I had become over the past year. I wasn't the same person who discovered that medical bill wedged between couch cushions. I was stronger, more decisive, fiercely protective. Felicia had unknowingly taught me something valuable. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous, not because they're cruel, but because they see everything, remember everything, and plan accordingly. I never wanted to use those skills against someone I loved again, but I kept them sharp just in case. 1 year later, I watched Asher teach Samuel to throw a baseball while Luna practiced cartwheels. The Texas heat was harsh, but the sound of children laughing made it bearable. Patricia had called that morning with final news. All hidden assets were recovered. Damien's company had paid penalties for money laundering, and both he and Felicia were barred from opening business accounts without court oversight. Supervised visitation reports showed Felicia was learning to be a better mother, even if she would never be a wife again. Samuel ran over, baseball glove too big for his small hands, determination written across his face. Daddy, did you see? I caught it 3 times. I saw, buddy. You're getting really good at this. Asher said, if I practice every day, I can be on his team when I'm bigger. He's a smart big brother. Later, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the front porch with a beer in my laptop, catching up on emails. The house was peaceful. No tension, no whispered calls, no secrets. Ruth joined me with her tea. Any regrets? She asked. About what? Fighting for this? Taking everything from her? I replied. Some men might feel guilty, but I didn't. Felicia had destroyed herself with her choices. I just ensured my children weren't collateral damage. And you'd do it again, Ruth said. In a heartbeat, to protect Asher, Luna, and Samuel. My phone buzzed with a text. For a moment, my chest tightened, old habits lingering from when every message might hide betrayal. But it was just a client scheduling a consultation. Normal life, normal problems, normal solutions. You know the best part? I told Ruth. What's that? I don't have to be suspicious anymore. No checking bank statements. No worrying where my wife is. I can just be a father, and a good one. Later, I checked on the kids. Asher was sprawled on his mattress with a sports magazine. Luna had fallen asleep surrounded by stuffed animals and books. Samuel curled up with his teddy bear, thumb in his mouth. Standing in Samuel's doorway, I realized Felicia had been wrong about one thing. She told Damien they'd be a real family after the divorce. But we already were.